Hey everyone, welcome back to Inside Indiana Overtime. I'm Seth Tao. You can't see Ben Ladner because his camera's not working. Say hi to the people, Ben.
Hey, yeah, my stupid computer does not, even though I clearly have one there at the top of my screen, and I've tried to allow it in this application, but it still does not work. So we'll just do it this way. It'll be all right.
Ben's camera will not cooperate today. Um, I'm in Maryland, he's in Atlanta, but uh, this episode of Overtime is being brought to you because Tom Crean was dismissed from Indiana basketball earlier today. We got that news around 12:15, right when the first game of the NCAA tournament was tipping off. So there's that. But Fred Glass gave a press conference about it at around 3 o'clock. Answered questions. This is obviously the second coaching change that Indiana has had to make in the last 4 months or so. Yeah, 4 months. So he did address that during the press conference a little bit. But Ben, what are your takeaway? What are your impressions of everything that's happened today?
Yeah, pretty annoying of them to drop it on us right there at 12:15, right as the first tournament game was going on and tipping off. Maybe they thought that they could slip it in without anyone noticing if they started it right there. But no, I mean, it's not surprising, I don't think. I mean, how long have we been hearing rumors about, Tom Crean potentially being on his way out or him being on the hot seat? And, there were rumors of him to Mizzou and NC State and just all over these different places. So yeah, it doesn't really come as a surprise to me. It's probably bound to happen at some point. This team underachieved this year, and whether you want to blame that on injuries or lack of leadership in the locker room, or you're one senior on the team being sidelined for the entire season and not playing a single second of basketball, I think the easiest scapegoat for the athletic department and everyone else to put the blame on is the coach. And whether that's fair or not, I'm not saying it is or is not one way or the other, but he's the easiest guy to blame, I think. So it's not uncommon to see a coach after a team that was supposed to be a potential Final Four team at the start of the season and got up to as high as number 3 in the rankings, losing the first round of the NIT tournament. It's not uncommon to see a coach after that kind of season get dismissed.
Right. Glass actually said that it wasn't just this season that tipped it over. It was kind of a building up thing. He said that both he and Crean knew entering the season that they were getting to a point where either you'd have to give him an extension, something that Glass said this season, and just really Indiana's performance in the Crean era wasn't consistently successful enough to make him comfortable extending Crean. So given that, your other options are go forward with him knowing that he's not going to have an extension, which can be dangerous if the program isn't already in a good place. And the other option, which they took, was fire Crean. So yeah, this leaves Indiana in a coaching search now. Glass talked a little bit about what he's looking for in a coach. He said he wants the process to go as quickly as possible, but that he's going to give it however much time it will require. He said that some factors that are bonuses for him are previous IU ties, so former players or coaches or whoever, former IU ties and state of Indiana guys. Those are two bonuses for him, but and also prior college basketball coaching experience, but things that are not necessary. So, I mean, what do you kind of make of that?
Yeah, what was the phrase he used? Like a double check plus or something?
Yeah, it was like IU ties is a double check plus.
Yeah, he said it like 5 times in a row too. He's like, that's a double check plus. Yeah.
How many double check pluses are you going to give?
Exactly. Yeah. No, there's certainly guys out there that have Indiana ties. A lot of great players have played for Indiana that are now coaching across the NCAA. So that's, I mean, he was pretty clear that, and that he hasn't really, they haven't zeroed in on anyone yet, which is to be expected since they just fired the coach like 5 hours ago. But yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't try to narrow down the list too much at this point if I'm just speculating. I wouldn't try to look at specific people and try to make rumors and storylines out of stuff that isn't particularly there. The thing that you mentioned a little bit about Fred Glass in his press conference was the inconsistency that he kept bringing up. And yeah, I mean, to me, that's the kind of the tipping point. It wasn't just this season, even though this season was kind of a disaster. It was just, Tom Crean went to 3 Final Fours in the last 6 years. All right, sorry, Sweet 16. Yeah. Oh man. No, he went to 3 Sweet 16s in the last 6 years. But they also missed a tournament twice. So,
right.
And it's tough to really evaluate a coach, I think, when, some years he'll get a good team to the Sweet 16. Other years he'll take a not so great team to the Sweet 16. Other years he'll take a potentially great team and they won't even make the tournament. That's really tricky to evaluate. And I think when you don't know what you're getting from your coach year to year, from your team, which starts with your coach, I think when you don't know what you're getting from your team year to year, makes it really difficult to kind of uphold that standard that Indiana keeps talking about, which that's an interesting point to me, that whole Indiana standard, because, basically since the Bob Knight era ended, Indiana has not been, this blue blood college basketball program. They haven't been this elite program. And I don't know, I think the whole mentality and mindset and expectation of Indiana, have like deserving a place or claiming their rightful spot or whatever you want to say in the top of the college basketball ranks, I think is a little misguided. I think they've sort of lost that perch, and right now it's up to them to kind of work their way back to it. But I think you see from a lot of Indiana fans and maybe some front office people as well, athletic department people, how they kind of expect there to be this standard, and if they don't live up to that standard, well, then they have somehow failed. But I don't think national titles right now are the standard, because Indiana has not really been in that position since the 80s. So I don't know. I think, I'm not saying it was the wrong or right decision to fire Tom Crean yet. I probably need a little more time to kind of, gather my thoughts and sort of make a more guided and thought out opinion. But I don't know. I think holding Tom Crean to the standard of you have to make it to the Final Four, you have to win a national championship, it seems unrealistic to me. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, only 4 teams out of 330 something or 350 something or whatever it is teams in college basketball make the Final Four. I mean, obviously there's power conferences within those teams, but yeah, I mean, that being said, Indiana has a reputation for being a basketball school, being a blue blood program. Perhaps that's been lost a little bit, but regardless of why, I think personally, I think that in time, Crean's legacy in Indiana will be shined upon very favorably. It takes, you can't judge a legacy right now, like right when an era comes to an end. That takes time to develop. But as I think his legacy is crafted at Indiana, like as his legacy is determined, how this era gets viewed upon, I think you cannot discredit what he did for the program. I mean, he took over after the mess that was the Kelvin Sampson era at Indiana, and I mean, the program was riddled with violations over Eric Gordon and everything. And Crean led Indiana back to national prominence, where they had a few rough seasons early on, but Crean led them out of that and got Indiana back on the national picture. But you're right. I mean, you talked about the inconsistency a little bit. I mean, they made the Sweet 16 twice, and I mean, both times they won the Big Ten regular season title under Crean. They made the Sweet 16, and then they followed it up the next year by missing the NCAA tournament. So it's just been inconsistent success, and Indiana has just decided they want a little more consistency. And I mean, it's hard to fault a program for wanting more consistent success when they can see it within their reach.
Yeah, I think the goal should be obviously to get back up to the glory days of IU. Like, I don't think it's like that. You can't fault Indiana for saying we want to be one of these elite programs again, but maybe expecting Crean to deliver that right now is unrealistic. Is probably what I was trying to say earlier. I think there's also a lot of recency bias that goes into it too. You brought up the legacy and everything, and I agree. I think in 10 or 15 years, people are going to look upon the Tom Crean era favorably, and I think he did do a lot of good things, but I think a lot of people look at this past season and they just think of the stagnant offenses, and they think of the underperforming and the loss to Fort Wayne and the first round NIT exit and all that, and that maybe that's sort of the image that they have of the Tom Crean era, but that's, I don't think, a really accurate representation of what the whole 8 or 9 years, however long he was here, really was.
Right. And something else you kind of got, we've kind of hit on a little bit, just the job itself. It was kind of interesting pretty early in the press conference. One of the reporters was peppering Glass with some questions about what he feels about his feeling about the attractiveness of this job. And someone said something like, this program hasn't won a national title in 30 years. Do you really think it's still a blue blood program? And he is completely sold. He's refusing to accept that this is anything less than a blue blood program, one of the top jobs in college basketball. And I think that's important to kind of at least view yourself that way when you're entering a big coaching search like this, especially, I mean, Crean was a very good coach, but I mean, clearly that this move is an attempt to see what they can do with a great coach if they can find a great coach.
Yeah, and I don't know if they're going to get that right off the bat either. I think there's definitely going to be somewhat of a rebuilding process to go through. Maybe it's a year, maybe it's 2, maybe it's longer than that. But we don't even know who's going to be on the roster next year, and then you factor in recruits and commits who committed to Tom Crean's Indiana program. Are they still going to come to Indiana? Are they still interested in the new coaching staff? Maybe we don't know that for sure yet. And then if you do bring a coach who is coming from another school, maybe you bring in some of his recruits. So you don't even really know who's going to be on the roster, and you don't know who the coach is going to be. So that makes it really tough to project what the season's going to look like next year. I personally kind of expect there to be not a significant drop off from this season, because a significant drop off from this year would be, pretty much a total disaster. But I think there'll be a little bit of a drop off next season. Just as far as the win-loss record goes, I don't know if this is going to be a quick turnaround. Like, I don't know what Fred Glass and the rest of the athletic department is expecting as far as what the team's going to look like and how they're going to perform next year. But I don't think they're going to immediately just turn around and all of a sudden be a Sweet 16 team again, or even an NCAA tournament team again next season. I think it's going to take a little bit more time than that. Don't you think?
Yeah. I mean, time will tell, but that's way beyond speculation at this point. I mean, the news, we just got this news today about the move itself, but as I said earlier, this is the second coaching change that they've had to make. As, of course, in December, they fired Kevin Wilson and they immediately hired Tom Allen. And you could kind of see it with Fred Glass today. Like, at that press conference when they got rid of Kevin Wilson, they immediately hired Tom Allen. He knew that Allen was the replacement. You could kind of tell a little bit today that, not nervousness per se, because I mean, it's obviously different circumstances regarding the firings, but there was a little bit of, I don't know what the future. He knew less about what the future holds today than he did in December, just because, I mean, it's obvious. He knew in December that Tom Allen was his guy. He doesn't know who his guy is going to be now, and now they're in a coaching search, which is, they've had 2 coaching changes, but they didn't have 2 coaching searches this year.
Yeah, I think it's just uncertainty. You have a vacancy, and they'll fill it, and they'll get the right guy, or at least they'll get a guy they feel good about. But yeah, I actually thought his demeanor, Fred Glass's demeanor at the press conference today, he seemed much more confident and a little more open and candid with the media than he did the first time. Obviously, because the first time with Kevin Wilson, there were some kind of sketchy circumstances and some unknown variables that the media was trying to kind of uncover, and Glass kind of had to deflect. And it was clear that there was some stuff that he wasn't allowed to say that needed maybe to be said, or at least that the media was trying to discover. This time, the circumstances are clear. Tom Crean just wasn't living up to their expectation, and that's it. So he didn't really have anything to hide. I thought he looked just a lot more he looked less nervous, I thought, today, just as far as facing the media and what he had to say to them. But I do agree with you that, yeah, he did look like he didn't, he didn't know. Because the question is always, right, like, if you fire your coach, who are you going to get? Like, you fire Tom Crean, okay, now you have to find a guy who's better than Tom Crean. So that's always a tough position for athletic directors, and I'm sure Fred Glass believes he can get a guy who he feels is better than Tom Crean, but off the top of the head, fresh off of the firing, it's hard to think just of a short list who guys you feel that you can get who are better than Tom Crean, who are going to make the program better immediately. So I think that might be where some of that uncertainty was coming from.
Right. And something else that I've kind of analyzed about, like, leading up to this, that I kind of realized about what the decision he was going to face, that he factored in, is also regarding the Kevin Wilson thing. He fired Kevin Wilson like basically a year after he gave Kevin Wilson an extension, like a big contract extension. So, I mean, it would have been he's said outright he wasn't going to extend Tom Crean after the season he had this year. But I mean, especially just it would not be a good look if he had to turn around and fire Tom Crean right after he gave him the extension.
Right. Yeah. And I know we said, it's probably irrational to go ahead and pinpoint potential replacement candidates, and they don't even know who the replacement's going to be yet. But for you, if you had to make a short list of guys who you think could come in and take this job, who would you put up there?
Oh man, I mean, that's all speculation at this point. But
right, of course. But who would your targets be if you're Fred Glass?
It's so hard to. I mean, especially with the NCAA tournament still going on, Glass did talk about this a lot. He said a lot of the guys they may look at are still currently coaching, which could present some challenges. But I mean, you've heard the names. I mean, I don't know how seriously they'd consider all of it. It's purely speculation. But I mean, Greg Marshall from Wichita State, Archie Miller from Dayton. I mean, everyone wants to talk about Billy Donovan from the Thunder, but
that's not happening. I don't know. I don't know where that rumor came from. I can't see that happening. I don't see why he leaves the Thunder to come to IU. I mean, maybe it does happen, but I have a hard time seeing that. Yeah, I mean, curiously enough, just last night before this announcement, Brad Stevens reassured that he's not coming back to college. So I mean, he's not in. I mean, I'd heard that Chris Mack from Xavier was out. So, I mean, who knows? And I mean, this might be a case where the under the radar, you don't want a big name. You want an under the radar kind of guy. But time will tell. It doesn't do us any good right now to speculate. Any lasting? Yeah, I want to throw out a little bit of an under the radar candidate. Tim Buckley, current assistant coach. I'm not saying he'll get it, but he's one guy that's really stood out to me on the coaching staff. And it would not surprise me if Tim Buckley were the next head coach of IU basketball. And look, I don't want that to be taken the wrong way. I don't know anything. I don't have any inside information or sources, but he's a guy that I think is probably, I'm sure he's gunning for the job and is probably at least on the primary, initial list of candidates that they'll look at. So yeah, I want to throw that name out there just so if it does happen, you can trace it back here. But yeah,
speaking, not Inside Indiana speaking.
Yeah. Steve Alford. What do you think about Steve Alford? I have, obviously he went to Indiana and was one of the greatest players in IU history, but I don't think he'd leave. He's got a great situation in UCLA. I don't know why he leaves.
It'll be interesting to see, but I don't know. It's all speculation at this point. It'll certainly be interesting to see what happens, but Glass talked about a little bit about the factors, saying Indiana guy would be good, IU ties would be good, but ultimately his options could be limited in those regards. we'll see what happens. But for now, Tom Crean let go by Indiana today. That's the big news. So for Ben Ladner, I'm Seth Tao. Thank you for watching, and we will talk to you eventually.